Okay, looks like we are going live. So thank you all for joining us. This is our 12th episode of the Black Males Mental Health and Wellbeing Support Group. We're really excited to have our guest, Janelle Heinrich. She is the Director of Public Health Madison, Dane County. Thank you, Janelle, for joining us. Again, we're really excited. This is our 12th episode, and we're really excited because over the past three and a half, about 4 months now that we've been broadcasting, we set out to do something different because COVID-19 demanded that. And so we wanted to come up with a creative way of staying in contact with the community. And as you can see, we're broadcasting from the barbershop here over at JP Hair Design inside our Men's Health and Education Center. And that was one of the areas that we were concerned about when all of the barbershops shut down. We wanted to figure out a way that we can still stay connected without losing the sacredness of the barbershops and what that means to the community. And so we came up with this concept of being able to try to keep everyone together. And as you know, the barbershops are back open now. They are all doing a phenomenal job, especially as I look out into the barbershop here and I see how the owner, JP, Jeff Patterson, has it set up. I mean, they are completely sensitive to social distancing. Everyone that comes in wearing masks. They have the plexiglass up that separates the individual barber chairs, but it is a thrill to continue to watch these African American men walking in the door, holding their black sons' hands, and they all have masks on. It just shows you that we are really, at least on this end, working to take this serious. And so having a Janelle with us to talk a little bit more about the public health importance of just, again, wearing the mask. We're really pleased with that. We also have Dr. Thomas, Alvin Thomas, and Dr. Logan Edwards. They will be giving a little presentation and giving their background soon. So with that said, Janelle, let's get started with you. And if you can kind of give us an update on how things are going from your lens as a director of this very important organization.
Well, so the general update, we are hanging in there and we are working hard. It has been an incredibly challenging and evolving 6 months. We're going on 6 months in Dane County here since we had the 12th case of COVID in the country. So we've had the benefit in a way of being at the beginning. So we had boots on the ground with CDC here to help us learn and get that daily connection with them for a little bit and establish relationships with folks that we can call on if we need to, which is great. And helped us set up what we need to set up to constantly be evolving as an organization to adapt to the emerging science, the evidence about what works, and how do we transition that into meaningful information for our community. And being able to be here and speak with you is one of those things that we're happy to be able to do, and as a priority for us as an organization to connect with as many folks in our community as possible to provide education, outreach, information, and just a touch point with the organization. So we are feeling like this is going to be a long road, and I know everyone feels that, right? It is taking a toll on all aspects of our life, which is challenging, but appreciate the support that you all are playing and being that amplifying message and really, providing that information to the folks that are in your network to help build the message of what we need to be doing as a community to keep each other well.
Wow. And Janelle, you mentioned about CDC being here to help kind of guide you. How massive of an operation it is to pull all of these because you have emergency management, I believe, DHS. I mean, how many organizations actually have to come together?
I would say every single sector of city and county government has been impacted to contribute to the local response here in Dane County. And we started having those conversations, and then the similar things happening at the state level, right? So Public Health Madison-Dane County is a very unique organization in that we're the only merged agency within the city and the county. So we are a city department and a county department. And before the second case, or right as the second case hit in Dane County, we were already working with the departments within the city and the county to help inform and transition their plans to predict what would need to be happening for the rearrangement of the delivery of services, right? So that we could maintain service provision throughout all units of government to the greatest extent possible, but adapt that in the best kind of preventive, according to the preventive measures that we need to put in place, and we've been constantly evolving. So it's hard to even, I mean, it's pretty much all city government and all county government, and the ways that things are changing and trying to adapt to recognize that the impact of COVID is having, it's not just on the health, it's on the physical, mental, financial, emotional well-being of everyone in our community. And that is an incredible toll. And trying to, I'm proud to see how folks are adapting the way that we're thinking about funding and programming and getting masks out the door to everyone and everything like that. And we know that we can do a lot, we can do only so much, but we have to do it in partnership with each other in and out of government to be able to really care for each other well.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. And I want to make sure that Dr. Thomas and Dr. Edwards feel free to chime in. I would say definitely, Janelle, we're really excited to have you on, mainly because of all the changes that are constantly occurring. Obviously, we've heard about what the schools will be doing. How much of a hand did you guys, Public Health Madison-Dane County have in that? Were you guys consulted on that? Or I don't mean to ask you to get too deep, but how
Sure.
did that work?
Yeah, so as part of our response early on, so we're a department of 142 permanent staff with another 15 seasonal or temporary staff, and we transitioned almost everyone from kind of what they did pre-COVID to what they're doing right now. Mm-hmm. And then we've been adding more and more staff to the department to support different components of the response, mainly related to contact tracing and testing. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question is, early on, we created what we're calling liaisons to different sectors, because we realized that when you look at the CDC website and you look at the state health department website, it's here's the good information, go talk to your local health department to figure out what to do. And so how did we need to adapt in a different way to be able to deploy, engage with different sectors, or engage with many sectors in different ways than we had previously, in order to build the body of knowledge of best practices of how to reduce that risk. And so our liaisons have been working in with the school districts, with healthcare, with community organizations, with transportation, and so on, to help kind of inject the COVID prevention practices into the practice of that sector service delivery. So we have been in constant contact with, to be more specific, with with all the school districts since early March.
Oh, wow.
To help really understand, what, learn from each other, right? Mm-hmm. We're not in the business of education, but we're in the business of keeping people well. Mm-hmm. And how do we translate those best health practices into those other settings? So earlier this week, we did put out what we called our requirements. And we have requirements laid out, as within the different orders within our Forward Dane plan, as follow these things. And we knew that when we laid out Forward Dane and then the different phases that we engaged in, we didn't always have the requirements ready, because the body of knowledge is constantly, the science, the knowledge is constantly emerging. So this week we put out our requirements, and school districts are starting to make their decisions based on, can they adhere to those requirements, which are really these, the basic things of masking, distancing, cleaning, and how do you do school with those things that really are there to prevent and reduce the risk of transmission.
Oh, wow. Obviously we know that this is just such a massive undertaking. We're just pleased that we're able to, with Dr. Thomas and Dr. Edwards, we're just trying to do our part on this end. Reaching out to Black men and their families. When we initially started this, Janelle, this is supposed to be a Madison initiative, just really focus on, African American men in Madison, Dane County. And now it has really grown statewide. And then I want to have Dr. Thomas introduce himself, and then we'll have Dr. Edwards kind of introduce themselves, so that you get a feel for where we're at and what we've been doing. So Dr. Thomas, you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of get back to Janelle.
Yeah. So like Aaron was saying, we definitely were thinking of this as an attempt to work within the parameters of Dane County specifically, and very quickly realized that this was having an impact and was becoming meaningful for people outside of Dane County, throughout Wisconsin. And then it was starting to move actually beyond the country's borders before it started moving beyond the state's borders. So we saw people logging in from St. Lucia and from Trinidad and Tobago and from Haiti, all Caribbean countries. And then we saw kind of the inward looking pull from the West Coast. We saw people from the South. We saw people coming in from different Midwest states. And then we saw people again from the UK, from Ireland, from Canada. And pretty soon we just saw people jumping in from all over the place. And all saying, giving same general feedback that they were finding these sessions to be very informative, but also a space where they can ask some of these questions that they may have had for a while and may not have had an opening for asking some of them. So being able to get some of those questions answered, or just to get some of those questions aired, has been proving really, really useful. So by way of introduction, I am Alvin Thomas, assistant professor in the School of Human Ecology in the Department of Human Development and Family Studies. I am a clinical psychologist by training, and I focus on families and children. More specifically, I focus on engaging positive youth development among African American boys and African American children, and understanding the role that fathers, Black fathers, have to play in the lives of their children and in the health of their families.
Excellent, thank you. And Dr. Edwards.
Yes, my name is Dr. Logan Edwards. I'm an assistant professor and health education program coordinator in the Department of Kinesiology at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And I'm also a lecturer of health behavior and health equity in the Department of Kinesiology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I specialize in teaching positive mental health and well-being education to future health and physical educators, as well as future public health professionals and practitioners as well. And my research and my service projects focus or consist on improving mental health literacy and access to mental health support services to largely underserved or marginalized or vulnerable populations.
Oh, yeah, thank you guys. And Janelle, one of the main reasons I wanted them to introduce themselves is because this is part of the team that we're excited that having Public Health Madison Dane County reach out to us. We really are sincere and we want to see this successful. Yes, we are all concerned, as I'm sure that you guys are on your end. We just want to make sure that all the information that's available, that we can get it out. And again, we have, a lead on many African American men in our community. We like the fact that it's just like these tree branches that kind of pull off, that all the people that will be touched. One of the things that I could share real quick is when we received the mask from emergency management. It's been a blessing to have those. I actually interacted with a young man and his coach, and talking to the coach, I didn't realize basketball is back up and running for the summer, and that we have a lot of basketball leagues that are still going. And so I inquired about, are you guys wearing masks? Oh, well, we have a few. And I said, well, we're going to take care of that. And so I was able to get a number of masks. I think we gave out about 50 packs to the coaches, and we asked them to spread them around through the league. But they actually just sent me a photo this morning that they actually wore them yesterday for practice, and then they have games this weekend. But in addition to that, we have been encountering a lot of our young people in the community, whether it's over at Great Gray Neighborhood, over at the Summon Darbo, allied area. So just being out, being at the parks and seeing our young people without masks, so we're able to provide those and have that short and brief education that comes along with it. But we really appreciate the opportunity that you guys have given us to be a part of this. And probably the next question, and feel free to jump in, Dr. Thomas and Dr. Edwards. In terms of your staff, Janelle, what has the challenges been as the director to keep just your staff sane?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not sure I have a great answer for it. I think, we are trying, the commitment of my staff to our community. And first I just want to say thank you. Thank you for getting those masks out. Thank you for making the connection. Thank you for partnering with us and having me here to help make those connections beyond what we can do in public health right now. And this is the way we need to be working, now and in the future. And how do we partner and lift each other up and share our messages and our support and our resources. So thank you for that. I think to answer your question, we are all so committed to this work in public health, and our staff are, what I try to say is do what I do as I say, not necessarily what I do right now, to be very honest, because I am probably not the best role model at the moment for a work-life balance, and taking care of myself in the way that I'm trying to encourage staff to do so for themselves. Because the days are long, the work is intense, and we are trying to be as accommodating and as engaging with everyone else's schedules so that we can meet, where you are. Was that a breakthrough? Was there a question?
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay, sorry. So, trying to build the teams of folks to kind of lean in to each other, to, find ways to build balance. Our days are not necessarily 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 anymore. So everybody is adapting to working remotely, connecting with each other virtually, and trying to find a bit of balance in that. So.
Wow. Yeah. So, wow. All I can say is for one of the first times that I can think about it, it doesn't matter what your status is. we're all in this together. When I say in this together, we all have a responsibility. We had our run this morning, our Black Men Run, and we're all masked up, and we did a pretty long run, and it's hot out, but everyone kept their mask on, and so many people went past, either running past or on their bikes, and they kept saying, "Thank you guys for wearing your mask. Thank you guys for," and I just, yes, we want to stay healthy too. We want to make sure that we don't pass this on to our families or friends. But that's the question that I have in terms of this mitigation. What can you tell us about what we could be doing more of in terms of keeping everyone safe? I know that the mask campaign has been off and running. How has that been going?
I was just looking, thanks. I love the picture of y'all and your Black Men's Run, and you're wearing your masks, your face coverings, and the fact that they're, you have them branded like that. It's so amazing. So thank you. And thank you for wearing them and role modeling that. I mean, those are the things, right? It's role modeling these behaviors and not being afraid to make that commitment and to talk about the things that we do, which is what you do to keep ourselves, each other well. We are doing this to keep ourselves well. We're doing it to keep our friends, family, and our community well. So I think y'all are doing it, and it's just keeping on, right? We just need to keep on and not kind of take our foot off the gas, so to speak, because unfortunately, the question that still continues to be asked of me is, when will this be done? I think folks asked me this in a few different meetings I was in this week, and I said, I wish, I think we all wish we had that crystal ball, but we don't have a lot of tools yet in our toolbox against this virus. And so the tools that we do have are wearing your face covering, maintaining your physical distance, and figuring out how to stay socially connected, which is what you're doing in these sessions, which is it's really important, right? So that even if we have to be connected virtually, socially, we can maintain that physical distance from each other, and then all those other basic kind of preventive measures. And the messages that you are kind of just fundamentally doing is, how do you keep your health and how do you improve, maintain, increase your overall health and well-being? Are those things that will help if you may get COVID, keep you, put you in a better place to address that, for your body to be able to respond to it. And so those are all, just so mutually important for each other right now. So it's keeping on with those messages.
Right. Yeah. And I know that last week we had Damon Boatwright on, Regional President of SSM Health. And we also had the County Executive, Joe Parisi, on. And just hearing the feedback from both of them, looking at this from obviously the community perception, and then obviously from the health system perspective. I just keep coming back to, this is such a massive undertaking, but one that is necessary, that we get it right. How challenging is it when you find that there are some maybe businesses that are just saying, we need to stay open, we need to feed our families? It's so difficult. And I know that Dr. Thompson and Dr. Edwards, we tend to talk a little bit about that, and feel free to chime in, guys, if you have a question. But, how challenging is that for you guys from your standpoint, when you see that you're up against that? We should be doing the right thing, but it's just a challenge overall. We haven't been through this before.
Yeah, I think, what we experience is there's two things. I think one, there's a general, we're nationally, right? There's how do we use data and science to inform our policy decisions? And that's been attacked a little bit, right, in the national narrative, and that's been challenging, right? Locally, it has a ripple effect, right? So it means that we need to work harder in getting out the message about why we're having to make policy decisions the way we're making them because they're not necessarily supported at the or there are counterpoints that are happening around them at the national level. And so we really are trying to make sure that we're rooted in that data, the science, the best practices, and how that drives our decision making.
Right.
And I think then it's always hard, right now, when we know that we're having to make some policy decisions that do have an impact on people's livelihoods, right? And probably the most challenging part of my job, and not something we take lightly, but when we're really here to make sure that we're keeping people healthy and well, we have to make those decisions. And I think when we hear, your question around what happens if folks are not adherent to perhaps the things that we're putting forth in policy, it's sometimes they may not know. And so we spend a lot of time. We have a team that we call our education and outreach team, and that they're engaged. I think the last time I got an update on the data was maybe a week ago. Since the beginning, they've engaged with over 500 or so operators, establishments, to help inform, or perhaps we got a complaint that so-and-so wasn't maybe following the guidance, the orders that we put out. And quite often, folks were just not sure that they were doing it right. And I think that there's a greater body of our community who just needs to know how to do it, and people want to do it right. And that's what we're here to help support, people's building the understanding of, as well as building, okay, how do you do that within what the order is, within what the policies are, but then how do we build the why, right? And that it's better for everyone in the long term if we can all work together to be able to apply those, life-saving, risk-reducing practices to every place that we can do that across our touch points.
Right.
I have a quick question for Janelle, and this is just for me to try to understand how you guys are doing this work of translating this much needed information to demographics and communities that may not be as receptive as you would think. I think the default is to expect that there's some kind of baseline appreciation for science. And when you see this very aggressive and hyper-political response to both the science and the undermining of that science. So we recently saw for example, that redirecting of critical information away from the CDC and barring the CDC from discussions on when children can go back to school and if and how children can go back to school. When we see these kinds of very obvious, overt attempts to undermine the science, and the politicization of the science, how do you translate then that same science to people who are not necessarily prepared to hear that science or who don't value that science? So for example, I've seen, I think it was in New York City, where the governor instituted that if you're going to buy alcoholic beverages, you must buy food along with it, and you must be sitting to eat it, as a way to kind of clamp down on the number of people who are out going to the bars, because that was seen as one of the big factors for the recent surge. And so some of the bars have now started selling $1 bag of chips as a way to go around it. I saw another interesting development where people who was at once saying they weren't going to wear masks for political reasons, for constitutional reasons, that they're now going to wear masks to fit the letter of the law, but not the intent of the law. So they're wearing screen masks that are literally pretty much lace meshing that protect nothing. So people are finding very creative ways to deliberately flout the science. How do you translate that science to people who have that kind of ideology?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I have a silver bullet answer for that, right? I think it's, I think that is the hardest part of our job right now, right? And it's how do we, and I think that's where it's important that we're connecting with so many different sectors to help build our understanding from a health department about what's meaningful and driving decision points in areas that aren't within our expertise, right? And so then how do we come to that middle ground in helping inform, okay, so if you want to achieve X, then this is why this is important for you to do your work this way, because then this will have a few, perhaps hopefully, right, the things that we're doing. And I would say that the things that we're doing in Dane County are working right now. 3 weeks ago, we had a 7-day average case count of about 107. This week, we're down to 80. We've put in further kind of restrictions, unfortunately, based on data to drive decisions to help kind of mitigate that, rapid increase in our daily caseload. So, it's translating that into meaning for a variety of for whomever that conversation is with, and what motivates one person may not motivate the next person, right? And I think that's where we kind of draw on our public health practices. That includes, what's our motivational interviewing, right? Our behavior health education, and all those other things that we have in our toolboxes, in addition to what we know about the disease, right? This virus, and the practices is like, how do we engage there? I do think it's very hard though, right? As we were saying, when we don't have a national strategy that's shared. We don't even have a state strategy that's shared. And so that does create challenges, right? When we are doing things in Dane County that we know other communities, when I talk to health departments, I think almost every day I have one too many conversations with people who hold my position around the state. And they would like to be doing what we're able to do here in Dane County. Because they know that it's the best practice and to minimize that risk of transmission, right, in their communities. So, I wish I could answer that more specifically, because that is the challenge. But it's all those different tools in our public health toolbox to really have those conversations, and also to find champions. Right, just as you all are champions in different ways for the different folks that you engage with, there's it's who are the champions to help kind of support those messages in those different communities, sectors, and so on and so forth.
And Dr. Thomas, I can answer that from my perspective and from my experience, and from what I'm noticing, either on television or social media, or just through conversations in my small social circle, is that as people are, the younger folks who are more resistant to some of the prescribed public health behaviors kind of have this attitude that even if I do contract COVID-19, it's okay, because I'm going to develop immunity to it, and then I'm going to be okay. And then I'll be okay later. And they're kind of taking it for granted that they are young and healthy, and that they're going to get over it, and then they're going to develop antibodies. And in my conversations with that population of people that believe that, which there's a lot of them, I just remind them that we don't know what this is yet. And I remind them of post-COVID-19. So post-COVID, we're starting to see lingering effects and lingering health issues that are following people around for months, even after they've gotten over, or seemingly gotten over, the infection. Neurological issues, brain fog, memory issues, depression, trouble concentrating, feeling fatigued on things that they normally would be able to do effortlessly. And that's just the beginning. Permanent lung damage, permanent issues breathing because of that. So I just remind folks that we are in a brand new time in history. We don't know what this is or what the long-term effects are going to be. And I think it's great that you feel that resilient and you've got that much vitality to think that you're willing to just kind of go through this and let it rip and see what happens. But also reminding them that there's no real treatment or cure for this. This isn't like a cold or flu where if you don't feel good, now I'm all of a sudden going to start taking medication or go through these other remedies that are going to help me feel better. You're not. You're going to have to sit through this and suffer through this until your body passes it, if it passes it. So to me, those are two kind of fear factors that I walk around with, thinking that I don't even want to take the chance because I don't want to get sick with something that I can't treat and then have to deal with that for how many days or how many weeks. And then even if I do get better from that, I don't want to have to be paranoid for the rest of my future about what did this do to me and what are going to be the long-term consequences of this. And that gets people to listen. I don't know if I'm changing behavior with that, but they're at least listening to me and considering that from a different perspective. So that's what I've particularly been dealing with personally, and how I will address some of those conversation pieces is just reminding them that we don't know what this is, and you shouldn't take for granted that you're just going to get over it and that it's going to be gone for the rest of your life. We just don't know that yet.
I think that the population that you're speaking of is probably one that is less informed, but open to information and open to digesting the information. I think the other sector of the population that I'm more concerned about are those who are aware of the information, but have chosen to believe counter information or alternative facts. And how do we specifically reach them in a way that translates the information that they don't want to hear, translates the science to them in a way that's going to change attitudes and change behaviors. So I think last week I mentioned something that I'm going to mention again, because I think it may be, I don't think it's going to be a silver bullet, but I think it may be an additional tool to add in the arsenal of how we approach this for that sector of the population that's more attuned to conspiracy theories and politicization of health. It's that some of these same young people that you're talking about, Dr. Edwards, and others who have experienced COVID-19 directly, either they've contracted it or family members have contracted it. I think we've seen some of this happening with some of the celebrities. And I think people from that other camp are more likely to dismiss celebrities. But if they can hear from your average Joe or your average Jane, and who can say, this is what I believed, and then I got this virus, this was my experience, and this is who I am afterwards. I think if we can see a proliferation of those kinds of short videos on, I don't know whether TikTok is still around anymore, but on YouTube and Twitter and anywhere else, if we can see those short videos that say, here are the real life experiences of average people. I think we hear the millions of people who are infected and it doesn't register because 1 million people just doesn't make sense in our heads. We hear of a few 100,000 that have died and it doesn't make sense when you hear 100,000 dead. I mean, it just doesn't fit. But if you can tap into one person's personal pain, it's a lot easier to identify, to see yourself, and then suddenly something clicks. And I think what's happening as we're dealing with this is that we're not getting that click. That click is not happening. So there's a circuit, and something is causing that short circuit. And part of what it is that politicization. Right. There's a mix. There's something that's stopping that connection between the individual and the facts or the science. That politicization.
Yeah, excellent.
I'm glad that I don't know anybody personally that's been affected by COVID-19. But in this context that we're discussing, I guess it would be beneficial to know somebody personally who had gone through it, because then I could use that story that you're speaking to, Dr. Thomas. And I do think that's a great point personalizing it for folks, normalizing it for folks because it's normal to be around us or to see it and have people affected by it. I don't have those stories, and those conversations would be so much more rich and so much more impactful on behavior if I did. So I guess it's just doing it, in some of those conversations, I guess it's just best to remind people that this really is happening to people in our community. And people in our community are hospitalized, but you're right, it's hard to get through to them when it's not when it's just not that salient of an example, somebody that they know or somebody that I unfortunately again, it's fortunate that I don't know anybody, but at the same time, for those stories and to convince folks that are on the conspiracy or the political ending of it, I think that it would be helpful to have those stories. I just don't yet. But you're absolutely right.
Well, Aaron, let me do a quick PSA then. If you have been infected with COVID and you've either recovered or you're still dealing with it, or you know somebody who has recovered or is still dealing with it, let the world know your story.
Yes.
Do something with your infection, with your suffering, by informing the world of what can happen. So let us hear your voice. Let the world know your story.
Yeah, excellent point. And Janelle, I know you have to get going. I'm looking at the time. We appreciate you sticking around. How are you on time? I'd imagine you good?
I'm okay. I can stick with you. So if you want me, I'm here.
All right.
I can go.
No, we're gonna keep you here because really a lot of what Dr. Thomas and Dr. Edwards is talking about, and we touched on this a little bit last week. I know that we had a message from one of the pharmacists, Shebnan, who sent a beautiful message, and she really, what I believe Dr. Thomas said last week, it really resonated that having masks that has a message that speak directly kind of to men, and I could share that, but Dr. Thomas, I think that was your statement. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think it is kind of an offshoot of the same question that I asked Janelle around how do we translate this science? How do we translate this messaging to very specific communities? I think part of the challenge with translating information around COVID-19 at the beginning of this virus was we had a drop in that. We didn't have the best messaging. It didn't necessarily reach some of the populations as quickly as it needed to. And so people were moving, some of these communities, Black communities, for instance, were moving with conspiracy theories and with the assumption that Black people won't get it, or if I don't travel, I won't get it. So it was that lapse in how we were translating that science to that specific community. So one of the things that we talked about was that one, that the public health organization in Madison and elsewhere need to start thinking about how to have these conversations around vaccines and about masks with these communities and translate that. And I think Aaron and Dr. Edwards, we definitely put ourselves out there to say, we're here. We're ready to help you with doing some of that. Yes. But we also, we were talking last week about specifically men and Black men, and talking about the number of different challenges of wearing masks for Black men. I mean, there's the elephant in the room of a Black man walking around with a mask. A few months ago, that would have automatically gotten that Black man attacked, thrown on the ground, and arrested by police. And now this Black man has to balance this feeling of, I still have this hypersensitivity to wearing masks because it could potentially lead to my death. But I have to now balance that with the hypersensitivity of not wearing the mask, which could also lead to my death. And so how do we translate this message? And I thought about the idea of masculinizing these masks, making these masks something that men find appealing. So often when we see masks, it usually has the assumption of vulnerability. Something is wrong with you, you can't protect yourself, your big, hulking physical body can't do its job. So something has to be added. Men have difficulty wearing glasses. Any prosthetic is difficult from prosthetic, sorry, is difficult for men to take on. And so we have to think of masks as a prosthetic. And how do we take that prosthetic and translate it to something that a man would be more than happy to wear or would be more attuned to wearing? And so we talk about camo masks, masks with messages on them, things like I think Dr. Edwards talked about.
Real men wear masks.
Real men wear masks. Black men run. Men's health. We're important. I'm important. Black Lives Matter. Farming is great. We're going fishing. Get her done. Whatever. I'm a tractor puller. Look at my muscle. Whatever it is that's going to speak to men and say, this is an extension of my strength, an extension of me, rather than an undermining or display of vulnerability. Not that vulnerability is bad, but we still have work to do on that conversation of allowing men space to embrace vulnerability. But in that time, we have to save men's lives so that they're present to have that discussion about vulnerability later on. And so it is taking what we have now and masculinizing masks in a way that's going to pass on messages that are going to strengthen men. And so maybe even as we try to embrace vulnerability, I forgot his name. I just watched this video today. But he wrote this book. He's this guy from Detroit who wrote this book called I Cry Like a Man. Mm-hmm. So that message does two things. One, it embraces the idea of vulnerability. And two, it points to vulnerability as strength. Well, it does three things. Points to vulnerability as strength and also saves a life by wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm. And one point to the messaging of it too, just one example, Dr. Thomas, of masculinizing the masks is using that term that is stereotypically masculine, and stereotypical men want to embrace this protector mentality. And that's exactly what you're doing when you're wearing a mask, because we know that the mask is more suitable for protecting others, not yourself. So that's what the mask is doing. If you want to identify in this old school version of what being a man is, of a protector, well, then you put the mask on, because then you're being a protector of the community. So that's just one example of how you can alter the messaging to play into the masculinizing of it.
I want a mask that says on it, "Thank me for my service." So, I mean, we could sit here and come up with all kinds of messaging and design and whatnot, but I mentioned this to County Executive Joe Parisi last week. I think this could have so many potential positive linkages. So we could support communities, go into Black communities, groups that have either lost business or whatever, and financially support them in masculinizing some of these masks, and then give these masks out to community organizations and say, hey, here are masks to go out and give to your men. And kind of like with what the Boys and Girls Club did with the interrupters for the protest, hire interrupters to walk around, to engage community and say, hey, have these conversations and to pass around masks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I'm reminded of two last things. Sorry, Aaron. Let me just, I do just want to put something out there for the viewers and for ourselves when it comes to these conversations you might find yourself in with, the conspiracy theories and the politicization of some of this, is people saying, well, I don't know anybody personally who's been affected by this. I know nobody, in fact, and therefore this must all be a farce. I think that it's always good to kind of revert that conversation to, well, did you ever think that the reason why you don't know anybody that has it is because what we're doing is working? Yes. That was something that was said in the very beginning too. People were really trying to say, look, the case numbers aren't as high as it was predicted. The science is wrong. Not as many people are being hospitalized as predicted. They were all wrong. And I was so quick to always be like, well, that's good that people aren't being hospitalized as predicted or getting sick as predicted, because these measures, it's showing these measures are working. So that's why you wear the mask, you socially distance, you practice good health hand hygiene, then the numbers are not going to play out as predicted. And that's just kind of like one way to kind of take the conversation. And then I think the last one, which works in a lot of different scenarios, is just saying, okay, you might be right about this. This might just all be some conspiracy and the government's just trying to control us and kind of prep us or set us up for something to come later. And you might be right. And therefore, everything I'm doing, distancing, masking, and washing my hands more often, is a waste of my time. Is that big of a deal? If you're right and I'm wrong and all of us are wrong, then is my behavior really putting me out of inconvenience that badly? And then
very clean hands at the end of it.
Right. And then but the flip side of that is, if I'm right, if we're right and you're wrong then and become infected, then what? Is it that much of an inconvenience for you in your life, or that damaging to your ego, to have to behave as recommended, even if it's for no reason, for 6 months to a year? I just think that the odds there and the gamble there is not worth it. So that's another thing. You might be right in the conspiracy theory, and I might be wrong, but that's not that big of a deal. But if I'm right and you're wrong, that's a big deal for yourself now and for the future.
Yes. Yeah. And I think this is kind of, gentlemen, and Janelle, this is part of the campaign, the importance of wearing the mask. Regardless of what you feel and what you think, at the end of the day, we really are in this together. And I'm starting to slightly see that shift towards people realizing, as the school, the decisions that the school has to make, particularly here in Dane County. And then you look at where some of the other counties, and school is going to be open. And so you start to ask the question, are we, I mean, clearly we're getting it right. We're listening. I talked with a friend that lives in the Wauwatosa area, and they are going to be, going back to classrooms. And, it just sounds like, I think, Janelle, you touched on this a little bit earlier, that, that messaging statewide, it has to be a little more consistent. But Janelle, this is what I have to deal with these two gentlemen. They really push you to think outside the box. They really do. Love these guys. But do you have any other questions, Janelle, before we let you sneak out of here?
I appreciate all the things that you all shared, right? And I agree with those. And I think part of I think you, Dr. Thomas, right? It's like, who's the trusted messenger, right? Was part of what you're saying. And I'm honored that you're letting me here to be speaking with you, because you are the trusted messengers for your community, and to be able to, connect with me and the public health community, so that we can work with you to have those messages be amplified and framed in a way that's meaningful to connect to folks, whether that's as the protector or, what that message is really where I am so grateful that you are doing the work that you are doing, and the thinking and the pushing around how do we all need to kind of lean into each other and reframe and have those opportunities to have the conversations that we're having. And I think, what I was hearing from you, Dr. Edwards, was, this affirm, counter, transform. Like, okay, I hear you. I'm going to give you a little counter, and then let's see how we can maybe transform that into a place of where we can find meaning or agreement in, we could be right, we could be wrong, and what's the harm in really, what if our goal is to keep yourself well, to keep your family well, for me to keep, stay well, is what's our middle ground there. So I think all of that, it's just so important to have, to be thinking about all those things, and to how do you build that into what your campaign is, and what you're role modeling, and how do we kind of amplify those conversations and thinking and through our networks. So.
Yeah, and Janelle, is there anything that you can share? We're starting to hear a little buzz about some of the vaccines. Clearly, I'm not a scientist. I can't fathom that we're anywhere close to a vaccine, but that's not my area. Has there been any discussion on your end about specific companies getting close, or do they tie you guys into that information? Because we definitely want to be a voice to the community so that we can start talking about vaccines and vaccinations. The thing that I don't think will be helpful is to wait until the vaccine comes and then start to talk about it. We want to start having those discussions now. And so if there's any information that you can provide us on, wordsmithing or whatever to get that out, so let us know.
I appreciate that. I would say I don't have a ton of information that probably you don't have, right, around, and I just mean that from like, what's the general kind of national conversation around vaccines, right? There is a push to have those developed. How soon they will be, who's in the lead, I don't have that, but I do appreciate, and I absolutely agree that it's important to not wait, and to have the invitation is what I'm hearing, to kind of have these continued conversations around how do we build understanding of the value, of the meaning, of the efficacy, of and address kind of the historical context in which vaccines have impacted the Black community, right? And different in the history of that. And so I hope that we can have those conversations in the future. And I think that it's probably, I think, as you said, or maybe I'm taking your words a little bit and going with them, it's not just one conversation, right? We're going to need to have series of conversations around why, the if and when and the how of when this is available. As a public health department, we know that part of our response and our responsibility will be in transitioning from mass testing to mass vaccination. That is our role. That's the role of a local health department. And it's not just the application of it. It's not just the execution of the vaccine at a day, but right, it is the conversations that we need to have with and across communities about why we would need to be doing this, and transitioning from that place. Hopefully that it isn't 2 years down the road, right? That it's sooner than that, but I don't have any better knowledge about when we might have hope for that. But it is something that we are planning for, what that could look like in the future.
Right. Well, yesterday I got an email from Ironman, Wisconsin, that they are unfortunately canceling Ironman. And so we had already rescheduled. I'm doing Ironman, the 70.3 series. We had already scheduled it for next May. They've already, for next May, extended it to September 2021. And when I hear these things, I think, is there more information out there that they have access to that we don't have access to? I don't know. But what we are seeing is when you start hearing these big organizations, these big events canceling, that to me is a strong indication that we're paying attention, whether another office is not, we're paying attention, and we're starting to value not just our employees, but we're starting to value the participants that spend money to participate in our events. Because if Ironman was going to have that event in September, us type A personalities, we were going to jump out there and get in the water. We're going to get on a bike. We're going to run that marathon or half marathon. And we just do it because that's what we do. And I think it's so important that we continue to, such as, a Janelle and people that, oversee these bigger events. It is so important that they look out for us, because again, if that event would be scheduled in September, people will show up to do it. They are actually looking out for us, and I appreciate that. Anything that you can speak to, Janelle, that will kind of continue that message, letting folks know who are listening that you guys are looking out for us. We just need to pay attention to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that framing. And I would say that just on a personal note, the Ironman Wisconsin race director is a really good friend of mine.
Okay.
And I know that, it's not all of our businesses, our organizations, right? We're paying attention in different ways. And I appreciate the framing that you said. It is those may be hard decisions we have to make, but we're making them because we are looking out for each other, right? And we know that it's in the best interest, that we're not just driven by our financial, kind of the return on investment, but from like, how does that impact all of us as employees and members of different communities? There's an Ironman community, there's your community here, and that how do we use those moments and those conversations to pay attention and to demonstrate, like, when we're making these decisions because we are looking out for each other. And that is so incredibly important. And so I appreciate that. I'm going to tell him that you said that. And you, but they're not taken lightly, right? And I think, but they are, because it's in the best interest of all of our health and well-being to really be mindful of the conditions around us and the people that are impacted by every decision that we make. So
yeah. And Janelle, I don't know if you were aware, but we actually go to 2:30. So anytime you have to go, we will respect that. We love to keep your face on with us. We appreciate it. I think the next thing I definitely want to touch, and this is kind of more of, Dr. Thomas and Dr. Edwards' specialty, the psychology more behind this. So we have the decision made that school is going to be virtual for a short time. Can you guys maybe speak to what a parent may be, anything you can offer parents who are now having to deal with this? Is there anything that you guys could share with them?
Since I'm not a parent,
Right.
nowhere close to it. I always kind of
You're gonna punt this one, huh?
want those questions to folks who have the experience, because I don't know what to tell parents right now. I mean, I can give them all kinds of healthy behaviors and like ways to practice pro mental health lifestyles in the midst of anything going on. So it would be that, but specifically to speak to the worries and concerns of parents right now, I think about that myself. I think it sounds tough. I think it sounds stressful if I had to imagine myself being a parent and trying to go to work, but also my child needs to be learning at home. How am I going to arrange all of that? Is there daycare going to be set up? Am I going to be able to find a sitter? I think it sounds like a lot of stress, and I would love to hear from a parent or anybody closer to it than me on what they say, and then I'll say that to the next time I get asked that question.
Yeah. So now we got for our audience, let's identify a couple of parents that will be impacted by this, and we will get them on to talk about this, because that's how we educate. That's how we build our community. As we offer the resources, we try to support one another. I can't imagine, my kids are grown, so I can't begin to wrap my head around the challenges with that. I don't know what goes into that decision. Maybe down the road we'll get someone from the school district to come on and talk about that, because I'd imagine folks have a lot of questions about that. So, but just from a standpoint, go ahead.
I guess I would say the number one thing is be easy on yourself.
Yes.
That just goes for everybody, but especially a parent. Like it's impossible to imagine to navigate that, and without stress or without worry or without tears or without fears. So be easy on yourself. Know that it's hard and it's difficult and that you're in a tough spot and you should be worried about this. And just know that you're not alone in that. There are so many parents that are right there with you. So I would say, especially because I know that Dr. Thomas and I speak to a majority male audience, at least that's our message is don't think that you have to bottle all that up and act like you're tough or act like you're not worried or like you got it figured all out and you don't have to ask questions or ask for help. Do the opposite of that. Ask for help, ask questions, express your concerns and your worries, because you should be, honestly. And that's emotionally healthy, and that's being real and keeping it real with yourself and with other people. And by you doing that, that might give somebody else permission in a roundabout way to go ahead and act that same way too, and say, I'm so glad you said something, because I, as a father, was worried and scared too. And hearing you admit that makes me feel comfortable admitting it now too. So be kind to yourself through this, and you're not going to be perfect. It's not going to be a smooth transition or experience, and that's okay. This is unprecedented in human history. Just get by, just make it through, and grow through what you go through when it comes to that. Be easy on yourself.
Excellent,
I
excellent.
think the first week we started having these conversations, and it's interesting how this kind of keeps coming back full circle. The first week we had these conversations, I think the messaging was a normalization and a recognition that these are not normal times. Even in not quote unquote normal times, parents are still out there trying to be super dad and super mom. Trying to be super dad and super mom in these very abnormal times is near impossible. You're going to run yourself into the ground and run your child and your spouse into the ground. You're going to run your family into the ground. Recognize that these are not normal times, and so your response is not going to be normal, and your ability to cope is not going to be normal. Some days are going to feel close to normal, and some days are going to feel like crazy making. Nothing is working and nobody is doing well. And that is fine. It is fine to not be normal in this normal. And as we think of going back to school, we recognize that essentially what you have happening is a ripple effect. As kids are going back to school, parents are now being called upon to exert more resources. And this is an already taxed system, both from the parent and the child and the family perspective. It's an already overtaxed system. And so parents are going to start leaning on the schools, and the schools are going to start leaning on the teachers. And the teachers are saying, but we also have our overtaxed selves and our overtaxed families as we're trying to do this ourselves. But something is going to have to give, and eventually the system is going to have to figure out a way to both provide support to parents and to schools, but not forgetting the children in the midst of that we can't expect the same kinds of things that we were expecting when these kids were at school physically with us. The expectations have to be different. I did two different groups, 2 different sessions with a group in Trinidad and Tobago, specifically focused around the parenting piece and around the parenting during COVID as children are dealing with this online education. And thankfully now they're often on vacation. But parents were expressing some of the same challenges that they would express in September of how to keep everybody sane and still make sure that my child does not fall behind. And some of the same challenges that Dr. Edwards mentioned, how to do all of that, recognizing that now I am going to have to go to work, or as an essential worker, I can't work from home. And now I need additional money to pay for additional child support that I never used to pay for before. And I may also have furlough days. So my finances are cut. There's increased expectation on my finances and increased burden on me physiologically and psychologically to do this work. So recognize that all of this is coming and start to plan. Some of these things you will be able to plan and take care of. Some of them sadly, you may not be able to take care of. And recognize what are some of these things that you have no control of. And I think Dr. Edwards harps on this almost every week. There are things that are within your control that you can do something about. And for those, go all out and do what you can. And then there are things that you have no control over.
Yeah,
And
excellent.
you recognize the fact that you have no control over them.
Excellent point. Yeah, Janelle, with your education and outreach teams, are these some of the questions that they get? You know, do you have parents calling? I'd imagine you have some parents calling your office. Is this part of what this team does?
I would say this has not been kind of the primary area where we have been focused, or where the conversation learn too, kind of how you're what the conversations that you're having and how you're sharing that information. Our outreach and education team has really been focused more on the orders, the requirements of the policies and practices to, you know, around COVID and the risk reduction components of that, the harm and risk reduction. But these are equally important conversations that need to be had. And I do think that the way you framed it is, you know, the what's in your control and how do you be easy on yourself, right? I mean, these are absolutely unprecedented times. And I would say as a parent, my way that I've embraced that is I have been very, very fortunate to have a partner who's here to help teach my kids, our kids, because and part of what I've had to done is to let the control go. And I am not going to be here to be able to do that, and to appreciate that I have that privilege and the benefit of having someone to be able to support that, and then support him in being easy on himself, because we all want to do the best that we can for our kids. Right. And it's the education of our children, and also they're tending to their social and emotional well-being, right, in these as well as we, you know, and how do we role model that in for ourselves, for them, because I think that they're carrying a lot right now that we don't always hear about, right? Because they're not in the same environments, their structures and their schedules are so different as all of ours are. But as adults, we have developed different ways to cope and handle with that how do we transition that or help our kiddos or our young folks in being able to learn those skills now, and what are the different ways that we're teaching our kids? What are the things that we can be present on in these moments that may not be, do we do math the way you do math? I don't know, I teach my kids math. I couldn't before, that wasn't my forte, but the way they learn it now, since my oldest was in first grade, he said, that's not how we do it. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, what are those other skills and resilience, you know, ways of kind of walking through life that we need to be role modeling and gracious on all of our, you know, ourselves and on them right now.
Yes, excellent. You know, and one of the things I wanted to make sure that we got in, so we're a weekend, you know, just about a weekend of the you know, the mask, you know, ordinance or policy. How is that going from your lens, from your department's eyes? How do you feel that's going so far?
I would say this one has been harder. There has been, and I think it's going well, right? I mean, we are, and we know that kind of adaptation to these practices is, we're trying to cram in behavior change to affect outcomes that usually take months and years to do, and we want them to happen immediately right now, right? Which is hard. And so I think we all have to have patience with that. But I think, you know, we've had a few challenges this week, and there are some of those are because folks may just don't want to do the masks. And some are just not knowing the best practice and how to make sure that they're doing it right. And some are trying to figure out how to not do it within the rules. And so we're just spending time on education and you know, what's that meaning of why do we want to do these things. But you know, I think I started to say I was just on the Mask Up Madison and Mask Up Dane on that page right before I hopped on, and I hadn't looked yet, and it was so exciting. I mean, all your pictures were up there, right? You know, of your Black Men's Run. But just the variety of folks and sectors represented in support of that. And I think it's part of that normalization effort, right? Like this is our new normal. You know, we didn't know 4 months ago that masks were going to be as important as they are today. And, you know, so how do we help normalize that in every way that we can? And you were sharing, you know, some ideas about that. And in the chat box, I saw just some thinking around that and the conversations we've had. So,
right. Excellent. So I was told to ask Dr. Edwards and Dr. Thomas that same question. So a weekend, you know, what are you guys' perception on how the mask policy change is going? What are your thoughts about that?
I can start. My own neighborhood, where I keep to my area in Madison, I'm seeing it's abided by very well. Even if we're outside, which is something that I think is a point of confusion for a lot of folks. And regardless if you need it outside or not, I just like people and groups like yours, Aaron, who just kind of show the model, show the example, acting as a role model for the community that masks right now in our lives are important. We don't care if we're 25 feet away, and if we're outside and exercising times where they say you probably don't need them, but who cares? We're going to share it, or we're going to wear it as a good role model for what we're all supposed to be doing right now anyway, to kind of keep it in the front of our brains. So I'm seeing it everywhere that I go. It's on the news and the comment sections of social media that I have concerns, and I'm not going to name any businesses, but if you pay attention to the news and the local news, I think we know what I'm talking about. I find myself concerned about larger organizations that are refuting it, questioning it, trying to push against it, and I just don't understand why, other than politics. So personally, I think it's going wonderfully. Organizationally, professionally, I see things that I don't quite understand. Is from my experience after a week so far.
Okay.
So I'm going to think of it from on the grading scale. I'd say, as far as what I've seen, I've been more around my area, places that I've gone to, stores that I've visited. I would say we're operating somewhere between a C+ B- range, which is not bad at this point. I came across people who were rushing into stores and pulling their masks out of their pockets, or people who were coming out of their cars with their mask on, people who were like me, a bit more neurotic, who were driving alone in their car with their mask on still. And then I saw moms explaining to the little ones when it was appropriate to remove their mask and why they were wearing the mask. And I thought, that's great. Those are really great starting points. Yeah. We definitely have lots of space to grow. And then when I started looking beyond, and I think maybe Madison is doing a decent job on wearing masks, and hopefully that's going to build. I think people who are hanging around like parks and open areas, that's where some of the masking issues become a little bit more important, because people are still thinking, oh, as long as I'm standing 6 feet away from you, or what I approximate as 6 feet, which might well be less, then I'm okay, I don't need to wear a mask. So I think some more messaging around that. Once we get outside of masks and then outside of the state, we start to see some of these less useful, less helpful responses. So for example, the school board meeting in Utah where most of the parents, almost all the parents showed up cramped next to each other and not masked. And the meeting had to be abruptly canceled. They were there to discuss the returning of their kids to school. And so if they weren't even able to come to this meeting and take the appropriate, apply the appropriate responses, it tells you what's going to happen when these people send their kids to school, these parents send their kids to school. So I think nationally, I don't think we're necessarily doing a good job. I think we probably are operating at a D or D minus level. But I think at least in the small bit that I'm seeing locally around my areas, we definitely are building. I'm hoping that this coming week I see us move into a solid B up to an A level. But yeah, there's work to be done. There's lots of work to be done still.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that feedback. One of the areas that that I'm prideful and thrilled that we were able to get the number of masks that we received. And, you know, again, as I'm in the community, you know, just, you know, visiting, not patrolling, Dr. Thomas, I'm visiting the parks. But as I'm visiting the parks and I see these young babies out there not wearing a mask, you know, the neat thing is just being able to reach in the box, pull out masks and walk up to them and say, hey, I care about you. Here you go. And they just, oh, this is cool. And it says, it's a lot of them in here. Yes, it's 5. So you use one and you take it home and give it to your family members, or you keep it to yourself so that every time you're out, you'll have one. One kid did ask me, so after we wear them, do we throw them away? And I said, no, you actually should wash it after each time you wear it. At least that's what I had to go on Google to make sure I was giving good advice. But Janelle, maybe you could speak to that. I think you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, I think, sorry about that. My lost my mouse on 3 different screens to get back to my unmute button. Yes, if you are wearing a cloth mask, wear it, don't touch it. Keep your hands off of it to the greatest extent possible while you're wearing it. Unhook it if it, you know, by your ears, so you're not touching the part that's covering your face or just the ties, and then wash them regularly. I'm so happy that we have the ability to get those cloth masks out because they can be reused, right? That's better for the environment, and they're sustainable in everybody's, you know, kind of daily lives to be able to have access to them. Getting in the practice of that, we've, you know, been building up a cache of them in my household, and getting my boys, I have 2 sons, to find them at the end of the day so that we can wash them. But yes, they, you know, wash them on a daily basis and reuse, and try to be that great role model. But like I said, it also is like when you're wearing them, try not to touch them, which I think is a practice that we also need a behavior change around, right? Because we have this new, I think you said, Dr. Thomas, prosthetic or whatever, how we were talking about that earlier, that we have a new apparatus to wear, and all those things are unique. And when they're more unique, we futz with them more and we do things. And so we have to build that practice of how do we wear them so they actually work the way we need them to work as well.
Yeah, excellent. And I don't know if we can have that photo shown. I had a parent that we provided masks to, and she sent me a photo just kind of confirming, yes, I did give the mask to my babies, and here's the photo to prove it. So Brittany, I don't know if you could show that photo or not. There we go. Uh, there we go. Yeah. So this is the photo. I'm really proud of that because if you look at that space, that is a huge facility. You have other teams that go all the way back. It's a huge facility, and it was important for me to be able to provide these masks to this team. Now that there's other coaches that are requesting additional a mask. So again, one of the things, thank you for putting that up. You can take it down. One of the areas that we are so appreciative of is it's the resources, the resources, the resources. When we have them, we can get them in the hands of the individuals and people that need them. We all know that this community is very rich in resources, but for whatever reason, we still find these pockets of people that don't have access to this. And so being able to, again, just drive around and, see someone without a mask and just reach out to them and showing them love. We talked last week, Janelle, about how to approach individuals. I know that the county executive actually sent me a text message saying that he had an interview and he appreciated the feedback that Dr. Edwards and Dr. Thomas provided him because he shared that with a reporter. But this is how we grow as a community, being able to, if you have the resources, share them so that we can reach these little pockets of individuals that are without. So it's got about 4 more minutes remaining. I will give anyone, whether it's Janelle, you want to have a last word or so?
Oh, well, thank you. I don't want to be redundant. I am just really grateful that you've are doing the work that you're doing, that you've been doing this work for so long and building such an incredible network of role models and people that you're engaging with in so many places, because what works for us in Dane County works for us. These practices work for I lost track of all the places, but I think I hear globally that you're connected to, and they're all so equally important. So thank you for letting me be part of that and for continuing on. And I just hope that I can be back, or we can have other folks who are here at different points in time from public health to continue to connect and learn from each other, right? I've learned some things and heard some things that you all have shared and your strategies and the conversations that you're having that will be helpful for me, and making sure that I'm amplifying that. I think, as you just said, the county executive took some of those things back. So hopefully I can do that as well.
Excellent. All right. Dr. Edwards or Dr. Thomas, I'm letting you guys ride it out.
Yeah, I can be a little bit redundant, just to kind of send us a message tying a lot of what we've spoken to. I think it's helpful to continue, if you haven't been already, then do this, but otherwise continue to behave as if you have the virus. That's something that I, again, keep in the front of my mind, and that is my mindset. Whenever I'm out, I behave as if I have the virus, and I think that mindset will not only protect us, but it will also protect others and show respect for others. So this is more to me than just about protecting ourselves and other people. It's also caring for other people and respecting other people, and those are just universal virtues that that apply every single day, every moment of our lives, showing care and respect. So keep your distance 6 to 10 feet as if you've got the virus. Practice good hand hygiene, keeping your fingers out of your eyes, out of your nose, out of your mouth, or out of the eyes, nose, or mouth of others as if you've got the virus. Wear a mask when you're in public and unable to keep distance out of care and respect for others. And then even go as far as to tell and show others that you care for them or that you have respect for them by reminding them of how to appropriately do these things. So take a step back if somebody's gotten too close to you or vice versa, and explain why you're doing that. Tell them how to fix their mask if they're not wearing it properly, or remind them not to touch it because I see you touching it. Don't do that. And I'm telling you that because I care about you. I'm not going to do that because I respect you. And ask questions about their behavior. Ask what they've been doing. don't be afraid to say, if you're getting close with folks, what's your behavior been like? Have you seen anybody that you don't know? Have you been around people that haven't been practicing good hygiene? Make that part of the norm to check in with people, correct their behavior, ask them about their behavior, and then your behavior is modeling as if you have the virus. And I think that shows care and respect.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us. Janelle Heinrich, Director of Public Health, Madison, Dane County. We appreciate you taking time to join us. You are more than welcome. Anytime you want to come and sit with us, you're more than welcome. Obviously, Dr. Logan Edwards, Dr. Alvin Thomas, you guys, I'm telling you, man, you're only as strong as the people that are on your team. And you guys are just magnificent. So I want to make sure that I thank our sponsors, SSM Health, Wisconsin Partnership Program, the All of Us Research Program. And now we love to have Public Health, Madison, Dane County Emergency Management. Thank you guys for supporting this effort. Let's keep this going. We will not be here next week. We will be showing some clips of some previous shows, but we'll be joining the week after. So, but thank you guys again. Again, thank you, Janelle, for hanging out with us. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, guys.